MLB teams have made their September call-ups. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster, and thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and this is a mailbag episode. This is your show. If you have questions for the show, tons of ways to get them to us. Best ways probably are subtext. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. So, had quite a few questions come in on Friday and Saturday about some of the call-ups for each team and some of my thoughts on which teams did a good job or a poor job of their September call-ups. And not every team actually called up prospects. The Tampa Bay Rays activated 2 injured players off of the IL, and so they didn't technically call anybody up. All of their moves were right-hand pitcher Kevin Kelly and infielder Taylor Walls came off the IL. And so not everybody brought up prospects, right? Some teams brought up prospects and immediately put them in the starting lineup. Some teams brought up guys that had not been up yet and gave them their first chance. And I think the biggest example of this is the New York Yankees. Jasson Dominguez, the outfielder, and catcher and first baseman Austin Wells came up. And as of time of recording, prior to Sunday Night Baseball, had played in 2 games so far over the weekend. Jasson Dominguez, his first swing in the majors, he homered off of Justin Verlander. So going into Sunday night's Game 3 of the series, he is 2 for 9 with a home run, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, and 1 strikeout. He started both games in center field. I believe he batted cleanup in one of those. And it's something where the Yankees had to do this, right? They've acknowledged they are not in it. They've acknowledged that this is not the year, right? And so what they did was, by bringing up Jasson Dominguez, by bringing up Austin Wells, who 1 for 7 over the weekend, RBI, has started both games at catcher. This is something where they are getting a chance to look at these players and see how they do to figure out how to attack the offseason. And this is not something the Yankees have been good at. You'll remember last year, they called up Oswald Peraza and they barely let him play. And so they wasted this evaluation period. Ideally, they're going to let Dominguez and Wells play almost every day. Dominguez, definitely. Wells, depending on how often you use him at first base, can he play every day or not? But the idea here is they are not going to go through 130 at-bats. They're not going to be on the roster for 45 days. You're not going to lose rookie eligibility for either Jasson Dominguez or Austin Wells. So let them come up and see how their game translates. Jasson Dominguez, for instance, 118 games this season between AA and AAA, right? 265, 377, 425. 15 home runs, 40 extra base hits, 83 walks to 133 strikeouts, and 40 of 48 on stolen bases. It doesn't sound amazing, right? But couple things. One, he's been a slow starter, typically, like just in the past. And then when he was in AAA, like most of those games, all but 9 of those games, so 109 of those games were in AA. In AAA Scranton, in those 9 games, he went 13 of 31 with 4 extra base hits, 10 RBIs, 6 runs, 6 walks, and 3 strikeouts. The right thing to do, if you're a team that is not in it, the win-loss record right now does not matter for the New York Yankees. But, 1, get them an evaluation period in the majors against quality competition. And then also, you can probably sell a little bit of tickets from people who want to not only see Jasson Dominguez and Austin Wells, but also want to see Anthony Volpe, also want to see Everson Pereira. Like you have 4 or 5 rookies in your lineup. And so it's a good opportunity to bring them up and let them play. The New York Mets, another team that is not necessarily in it and needs to lose. You'll remember because they went so far over the luxury tax, their first round pick is getting sent back quite far in the MLB draft. But if they finish with one of the 6 worst records in baseball, they will be part of the draft lottery and they will be able to get a top 6 pick. Now, there is no caveat, there is no disclaimer that says having a super high payroll and having that penalty for the luxury tax overrides your position in the lottery. That rule does not exist because I'm sure MLB did not expect somebody to spend that much money on a payroll and be that bad. So the Mets need to lose. But they called up, intelligently, Ronny Mauricio. He's played in all of his games so far, 5 of 11 with a run, 2 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases, hit a ball 117.3 miles an hour. Absolutely absurd power, and would have been the hardest hit ball over the weekend if not for Ronald Acuna Jr. hitting a home run at 121. I think it's the 3rd hardest home run in StatCast history and the 7th hardest hit in StatCast history. But they brought up Ronny Mauricio. He played 2 games at second base. Remember, you have Francisco Lindor at short. And so second base is probably where Ronny Mauricio is going to be used next year, meaning you now have the ability to improve your outfield by sending both Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil out there. You can automatically improve the outfield over some of the options you were rotating through left field. So another team that has let him play. Now, not every team has been smart about this. The Chicago Cubs called up outfielder Alexander Canario and have not let him play. So the start of his year was delayed. In the Dominican Winter League last year, he broke his ankle and dislocated his shoulder on the same play. He had a bad day. It took him a while to get back into competition. He was in 7 games in rookie ball. They gave him something like 10 games in high A before he finally got to AAA with Iowa on July 14th. Now, in the 36 games in AAA, Alexander Canario, 276, 342, 524. It's good. It's not overwhelming, right? 8 home runs, 20 extra base hits, 15 walks to 45 strikeouts in 36 games. But once he got his timing back, the 23 games in August for Alexander Canario in AAA Iowa with the Cubs, 305, 356, 632, 7 home runs, 17 extra base hits in 23 games. So almost won every game. 8 walks to 33 strikeouts, 2 on stolen bases. The Mets call him up. The Cubs call him up and promptly have not let him play in a single game since he came up. What is the point of calling him up if you are not going to let him play when he is up? It doesn't make sense to me. All you do is you keep him from getting everyday at-bats by not letting him play at the major league level. Just don't call him up then. Call somebody else up. So not every team gets this. Not every team understands the value of this. But some of them do. Some of the good ones do. In just a minute, I've got a couple questions about AA and AAA, including the difference in the quality of competition and pitcher Paul Skenes. We'll get to that next right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Nutrafol. It's the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, give you visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. They have a drug-free, patented technology that provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. So go to Nutrafol.com/min to take their hair health wellness quiz to identify causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair through whole body wellness. So take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men, enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Find out why over 4,000 hair care professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Okay, so back to more of your questions. Question from Anthony, subtexter, longtime everydayer of the show, supporter of us. Love you, Anthony, and your Modesto Nuts. Asked about, he said he's seen a couple different places amongst the prospect apparatus where they've talked about the difference in AA and AAA isn't that significant. And wanted to know if I could, one, if I agreed with that, and then if I could shed some more light onto that. So a lot of this comes back to a couple different factors. One is the contraction of the minor leagues. So when you lost extra teams in that 2020 stretch of no season, one of the things you did is by getting rid of some of the short season ball and some of the lower levels of the minors, you made it more difficult to weed out the players who are not going to be major leaguers, right? And so because of that, you have less places to stash prospects. You only have 4 levels now, especially once rookie ball is over. You have 4 levels. And so you inherently have more prospects, more actual prospects per level. There's 120 players in your minor league organization. There's 30 guys who are going to be ranked. And of them, maybe 15 or so, depending on the team, could be more, could be less. Maybe 15 of them are going to have a legitimate chance at being a big leaguer. Maybe 5 of them have a chance at being above average, actually accumulating positive WAR. And when you only have 4 levels of the minors, you naturally have more talent at every level. And the lower levels of the minors, so A and high A, the big thing that those levels do is, one, they get guys acclimated to professional baseball's schedule, right? Think about a college pitcher. A college pitcher throws or pitches a game, has an outing once a week. He'll throw a midweek bullpen, a Wednesday, a Tuesday, something like that. He's pitching once a week. A hitter is playing, if he's a starter and plays every day, he's playing 4 times a week. When you get into the lower minors, you are pitching every 5 days. If you're a position player, you're playing 6 days a week. Now, they may give you a DH one of those 6 days to give you a break or whatever, but you're playing 6 days a week. You're traveling, you're living your life as a baseball player versus going to classes. Prep players, it's even more prominent because rather than playing just a high school schedule, again, you're playing 6 days a week. So the lower levels do that. And then the other thing the lower levels do is that's where you filter out the guys that are not necessarily good enough to be organizational guys, right? Your 18th rounders who it's the 7th player drafted off of that SEC team, right? They can hold their own in single A or maybe even in high A, but odds are they're not going to be a starter. Odds are they're not going to make MLB, and they're not going to be a regular at the MLB level. And a lot of them stop playing after a couple years. They hang it up and they go into the real world. And by the time you get to AA and AAA, you filtered a lot of the non-professional ball players out, the non-future big leaguers out. And you have less levels to distribute your actual major league potential guys because you only have 4. And so AA and AAA end up having a lot of talent at both levels. Now, to me, there is a significant difference in what you're trying to do in AA and AAA, right? Double A is still mostly development, okay? It is there to make you, the player, better. It is there to teach you to not chase that slider down and away. It is there to teach you how to land that backdoor cutter. That's what it is there for. Triple A, the purpose of the Triple A team is to help the major league team win. So when you are a prospect and you are developing, when you are in Double A, you are learning the skills that you did not already have to make it to the major leagues. When you're in Triple A, you're learning how to be successful at the major league level. You're facing quad A guys, you're facing veterans who are trying to get back in the league, guys who have experience at the major league level and they know all the tips and tricks on how to get guys out, how to get you to chase this pitch, how to sequence you to get you to look foolish, whatever. And there's not a ton of overlap because there's a bunch of talent at both levels, but you're doing different things. You're getting better with your individual talents at Double A. You're learning how best to use those talents to be successful in Triple A. And a lot of teams, depending on where their Double A affiliate is and their Triple A affiliate is, or what league they're in, or geographically where it is, they may call guys up from Double A versus Triple A. The Angels, great example of this. Because their Triple A affiliate is in a league that is an extreme hitters park, or extreme hitters league, they like to call up prospects out of Double A. Conversely, the Tampa Bay Rays, they almost always call guys up out of Triple A. And from what I've been told, it's literally something where it is easier to get a flight from Durham to Tampa than it is to get a flight from Montgomery to Tampa. So they send them to AAA, get them ready to do what the team needs them to do to be successful, and then flies them from Durham to Tampa versus Montgomery to Tampa. There isn't a huge difference now like there used to be, but you're doing different things at each level, if that makes sense. Jason sent us an email, new listener to the show this summer. Glad to have you, Jason. Asking about my thoughts on Paul Skenes and what he's been able to do in Altoona. Quick reminder, he's had 2 starts. August 26th, he had the only bad start of his minor league career. He lasted 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, was pulled after 33 pitches, 16 were strikes. He did have another outing on September 1st, Friday, against Erie. 2 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 3 strikeouts. I think a big part of Paul Skenes there and the struggles in Double A, honestly, as dumb as it sounds, it's probably the baseball. Yes, it's a higher level of competition. You filtered out the guys that are not going to be successful for the most part, and these are all future big leaguers or potentially future big leaguers. But part of it, too, is it's a different baseball when you get to the upper minors versus the lower minors. And so you just don't quite know exactly how your stuff's going to work until you get out there. So you give him, it's an unfamiliar environment. It's the 3rd different level he's pitched at this year because he had a start in Complex. He had 2 starts in Bradenton, which is a beautiful ballpark, by the way. Gorgeous ballpark. And then a start in Altoona. But he's doing it with a different baseball against a higher level of competition. He had 1 start where he struggled. The next start, 2 innings on 25 pitches, 18 are strikes. He gets 5 swinging strikes, 4 ground balls. Literally nobody puts the ball in the air against Paul Skenes. Not surprised at all. Probably only going to get 1 or 2 more before you shut him down for the year because he's pitched so much, with the goal of turning around and inviting him to spring training, like inviting him to Major League spring training next year, understanding he's probably not going to make the team, and that's fine, but we're at least going to invite him. I still think he's going to be fast, as long as he's healthy, fast track to the bigs. You'll see him. He'll probably be the first pitcher from this year's class to debut next year. And ultimately, I think Paul Skenes is going to be a very good professional, but I'm not worried about that first start at all. There's so many mitigating factors in that not concerned at all. In just a minute, I had a question about the rule changes coming up in AAA. I'm not sure everybody knows about them, so we're going to talk about those next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. It's entirely possible that your fantasy team at this point in time in the calendar may be out of it, right? But that doesn't mean that some of your shots did not work, right? You were correct on this guy breaking out or that guy breaking out. Maybe you were like me and you thought Jorge Mateo was going to really do the dang thing and he did not. But use that knowledge. Yes, your fantasy team may be out of it, but you can continue playing fantasy and maybe even make up for some lost seasons with Sleeper's daily fantasy picks. They have dynamic payouts available right now. So what that means is they give you individualized multipliers on different projections based on the likelihood that player will do that thing. So you can get up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper, but you can get more money with less picks than other apps in the marketplace. So use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details, but Sleeper's operational in over 30 states, so check out Sleeper today. Okay, so I had a question. Somebody said that they heard that AAA was changing some of the rules. So they wanted to ask me what is going on, and there's a couple different changes to be mindful of because these are all changes that could impact the major league level next year. Now, I'll remind you before we get into this, AAA has automated balls and strikes. They're testing both systems. The half of the week, it's a 6-game week, half of the week, it is fully automated balls and strikes. The robot calls the balls and strikes. The umpire has the earpiece in. It says ball or strike. They give the signal. The other 3 games, the umpire calls the balls and strikes, and you have the challenge system where the pitcher, the hitter, or the catcher can challenge the umpire's call. You see it on the video board immediately, it's like within seconds. And it either overturns it or it upholds it. I think it's only 3 challenges per team per game or something like that. And different teams approach it different ways. Some teams only let the catcher challenge. Some teams let anybody challenge. It's really interesting. But what they're changing involves the automated strike zone across the entire week. It's going to have a bigger impact when the robo-ump calls the game itself, but it'll impact it across the week. So how they used to figure out the strike zone for you was they took your listed height and they went and officially measured everybody in spring training. That's how we found out Ryan Bliss, now with the Mariners, is 5'6" and not 5'9". But what they were doing was they took your listed height and then they used percentages of that, 27% and 51%, to make your strike zone. Now, as you can imagine, that is not an incredibly accurate way to do it, right? Because if you crouch or depending on how you stand or whatever, it may affect what your strike zone looks like. You may have a strike zone that's below your knees if you stand up tall in the box, or if you crouch, it may be way by your neck as a strike. What they're doing instead, because they have the cameras that do everything for the challenge system, they are changing to using motion tracking of your limbs to make your individual strike zone. So the bottom of the strike zone is going to be equal to your knees. The top of the strike zone is going to be 2 baseballs above the midpoint between your hips. And rather than just using an arbitrary measurement and making a box, now they are going to use your actual strike zone based on how your body stands in the box. So it should be more accurate, right? Now, the other thing that they are changing, and this has been really interesting talking to prospects who were in AAA and then have come to the bigs, is when they instituted this automated strike zone early in the year, or the beginning of the season, they intentionally lowered the top of the zone. The thought process from Major League Baseball was that the top of the zone, and specifically fastballs up in the zone, that ride in the top of the zone fastball, that had gotten a bit out of hand. So they deliberately lowered the top of the zone to make it harder to get strikes up in the zone to try to cut down on strikeouts. They are somewhat budging on that. They're restoring, I believe it's half an inch back to where it originally was. So I want to say they lowered the entire thing by an inch or 2 inches, and they're restoring some of that back. It's still not going to be where the major league zone pretty much ends up being, but they're giving pitchers a little bit more at the top of the zone to try to correct from being too aggressive with lowering the strike zone at first. So that's the first major change at AAA. The second major change at AAA is the pitch clock. In the majors, 15 seconds with nobody on base, 20 seconds with a runner on. In the minors all year, it's been 14 seconds with a runner on instead of 15, and 19 with no one on instead of 20. They are instead normalizing this. It will always be 17 seconds. It doesn't matter if there's a runner on, no runner on, it will always be 17 seconds. The idea here is they got feedback from hitters that it was frustrating to have to speed up what they were doing because now that there was a guy on second, they automatically got less time. And pitchers had a similar thought process. Having varying amounts of time was a distraction because they had to keep track of, do I have 20, do I have 19 seconds? Do I have 14 seconds? And so they just said, okay, flat 17 seconds. Now they also said the clock will start when the ball has been caught by the pitcher, not when the pitcher is back on the mound, because they saw that pitchers had learned, I can just walk to the grass in front of the mound, catch the ball, and I've got all the time I want until they mark it ready to go because I'm not on the mound yet. So when the pitcher catches the ball, that will set the clock to start again at a constant 17 seconds, no matter if there's a runner on base or not. For the last month of the season, AAA will have different rules. I still think you may see a variation. You may see that 17-second clock come to Major League Baseball next year. Depending on how this does, they may want one more year of it. I do think eventually when you get robo-umps at the Major League level, you're going to get that challenge system. So them being able to figure out this strike zone, like this could potentially be impactful because they've had enough complaints on this where it's been deemed not ready for prime time. But if they can figure this out, if they can use this last little bit of tweaking to get it where, for the most part, everybody's happy with the strike zone, this may be what they need to go ahead and say, we're going to bring the challenge system to Major League Baseball, where pitchers, hitters, and catchers, and nobody else can challenge ball and strike calls using the robo-ump system. Fantastic week this week. We're doing the Prospect Team of the Month. I have a special guest for that. We're doing a couple different farm systems, including Tampa Bay's. Reminder, if you have questions for the show, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, Discord, subtext. Lots of ways to get those to us. Also, if you're interested in watching minor league baseball this week, if you turn on the AA Montgomery Biscuits, I will be on the broadcast all 6 days this week. Me and a colleague are calling the Montgomery Biscuits games, AA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays, all week this week. So if you have MLB.TV, if you have the MILB at Bat app, pull that up, check it out, tweet at me, let me know that you're there. Until next time, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.